As I said, it has been determined that this is a hoax, that it was a publicity stunt. We believe that we have evidence at this point to indicate that it was a publicity stunt done with the hopes of marketing themselves or better market themselves for a reality television show at some point in the future. I know this is going to be very disjointed, and I somewhat apologize for that, but there's a lot of points I wanted to cover, and some of them may be somewhat out of order. But first thing, let me talk about local prior history. We've only had 2 prior calls to this residence, both of them being 911 hang-up calls. One of them was cleared after it was determined that a juvenile had been messing with the phone and accidentally dialed 911. The second call was cleared as a suspicious circumstance. There's a possibility or potential that there was some domestic violence involved in that call. However, after screening it with the district attorney's office, there was insufficient evidence to proceed with a criminal prosecution. A couple other things I wanted to confirm. There's been issues as to the timeline and who called whom when. We have been able to confirm that the Henneys did in fact call 9 News. We have been able to confirm that they did call the FAA. However, the timelines of when these calls were placed and what order and whether they were called before or after 911 was called is still questionable. We haven't been able to determine that timeline. We have put a preserve order in place for the Henneys telephone records, and of course we'll be getting subpoenas or search warrants in order to access those records so we can establish a timeline. Another issue that came up, whether or not this device, this spaceship, was capable of launching with a 37-pound 6-year-old in it. The day the event occurred, we took the dimensions and the information and the weight provided to us by Richard Henney and gave that information to a professor at Colorado State University. He's a professor of physics. He was asked to join us here today. I'm not sure if he is. Professor Brian Jones. Based on the information and the weight and the volume provided to us by Richard Henney, Professor Jones determined that it was in fact possible for this balloon to have launched. However, now that we have custody and have recovered the balloon and the utility box and weighed them and have precise measurements, Professor Jones has re-examined that, has recalculated it, and based on the accurate information and the accurate weight of this device, we now know that it was not capable of lifting off. In fact, the difference is due to 18-pound discrepancy as to whether this thing would go airborne or not. The original calculations that were provided to us showed the entire contraption weighing 18 pounds less than it actually did. And that 18-pound weight difference is the difference of whether this thing would take flight or not. We also wanted to look closely at the construction of this device. Basically, it's a 1 mil plastic tarps that were taped together and covered with aluminum foil. The utility box, the base of it is a very thin piece of plywood, and the sides of that box are cardboard, all held together with string and duct tape. Certainly we wanted to question whether that was strong enough to support the weight of Falcon. We have that on display in our evidence bay. We will show that to you at the conclusion of this press conference and allow you to get some photographs. We did place 37 pounds weight in there and have suspended it, and it is in fact capable, as bizarre as it sounds, being held together with duct tape. It will in fact support the weight of a 37-year-old boy, or a 37-pound boy, excuse me. I want to recap the events just briefly up to this point. You know, the morning this occurred, it was obviously chaotic. We responded, as a number of other rescue personnel responded, to what we believed was a life-threatening event with a 6-year-old boy's life in jeopardy. We responded in a rescue mode. After the balloon landed and it was determined the boy was not in there and determined that he was not in the house, we went into a body recovery mode. So clearly emotions were running high. At that time, and I've made a big point out of talking about the emotional condition of the family, their body language, their nonverbal communications, everything that we experienced with the family to that point was very consistent